The Life of Hiro, Darling in the FRANXX. Hiro is the main protagonist of Darling in the FRANXX. He was a parasite with the codename 016 and was once known as a prodigy among the children. However, he failed to synchronize with his partner Naomi and was considered nothing but a failure as a pilot. As a result, he didn't know where he belonged and struggled to find his place in the world. However, upon being partnered and piloting with Zero Two, he became an official parasite and found a new reason to live. Hiro and Zero Two were the newest members of the 13th Plantation, piloting a FRANXX called Strelizia. Over the time spent together, he began to reproduce feelings of romance with Zero Two, and when their relationship as partners began to take a turn and slowly crumble, he reawakened his previous feelings during childhood with her, along with his current feelings of love. The two eventually began a relationship together before their demise. Although motivated to fulfill his duty as a parasite, he later makes it his purpose in life to free all the parasites from Ape's control, and he selflessly sacrifices his own life to protect his friends and the planet. 1,000 years later, Hiro and Zero Two's souls reincarnate as a pair of children that meet each other again and rekindle their romance. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Hiro. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media accounts. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Background. Hiro often wondered who he was, as he says that the garden was the entirety of his world and he always thought about it. He was in the garden for as far back as he could remember. They lived there to become parasites who would fight for Papa and the others. All children were referred to by their code numbers. The lower the number, the higher the child's potential as a parasite. The double digits up to 99, the teens in particular, were given special treatment. Hiro was one of them, and he was told he was special unlike everyone else. Hiro names the children. As a child, 016 gave himself the name Hiro when he tosses a ball and it rolls into Ichigo's feet. She sits crying and doesn't look up. Ichigo wonders if she's strange since everyone else has stopped showing emotion, though she continues to cry and says she wants to be like everyone else. She asks if she should get more injections. Hiro says that their codes are in the teens, so they were different from the others to begin with. She says she doesn't want that, and being different is scary. Hiro gives 015 the name Ichigo. Other children begin to ask for names as well. Though they wait for their parents, they never return to them. Mitsuru shyly asks for a name too. Hiro smiles back at him. Two adults enter and say that they can't change their designation without permission. Hiro politely asks what the problem is. The adults realize he's one of the teens and simply tells him not to just do as he pleases before leaving. Hiro thinks that they never answered his questions and no other children ever asked any. At some point, Hiro gives Ichigo a hair clip as a gift. By the age of 9, Hiro became a special research subject and underwent tests at the lab all by himself. If he did well, he was given a reward. One day after testing, he witnesses Zero Two being dragged along for testing. Hiro asks an adult who the girl with the horns is. She becomes frustrated and scolds him for always asking questions and orders him to his room. There, he decides to find out for himself who she is. After testing, he tries to sneak off but is stopped by an adult. He fails in his other attempts and runs out of ideas. Outside, he notices the girl trying to get her book back from an adult. He scales a large tree to look through her window. Zero Two manages to take the book back and the woman gives up. For a reason unknown to Hiro, he's overjoyed to see her happy. As Mitsuru walks off with an adult, Hiro asks if he's going to the lab and if there's something wrong. Mitsuru says he's going to get an elixir injection, as he won't be able to stay if he doesn't. Mitsuru says he wants to become a parasite with him. He asks if he comes back alive if he would pilot with him. Hiro happily agrees and the two make a pinky promise. Afterwards, Hiro, Goro, and Ichigo quietly walk back together. They find that code 494 was taken away and another notes that it was code 367 before that. The three look on scared until Hiro says they have to do something. Goro says that Papa and the others made the decision and Ichigo says there's nothing they can do. An adult suddenly appears to collect Hiro for testing. Though Hiro asks where the other kids went, the adult ignores his question and tells him to get ready. As Hiro undergoes testing, an adult notes that his sensitivity is troubling and may affect the other children. Dr. FRANXX observes him and a man asks if they should increase his yellow blood cell dose. Dr. FRANXX says no because he's interested in what kind of parasite a child like him will grow up to be. After finishing his testing and receiving candy, he leaves the room alone. He hears screaming and goes to investigate. He rushes over to find Zero Two undergoing painful testing with a group of adults surrounding her. Horrified, he falls to the ground. A man suddenly appears and orders him to return to the garden. He asks him to stop causing her pain. The man says it's none of Hiro's business and pulls him away. Frustrated with his situation and unwilling to watch the girl suffer anymore, Hiro packs a portable searchlight and scaled one of the trees near her cell. She had just gone through testing and is now curled up on the floor. Hiro shouts and slings his searchlight at the window. Shattered glass carpets the floor and the wind gushes in the room. Though Zero Two is initially aggressive, she sees his tears and begins to crawl towards his outstretched hand. When they both put their weight on the branch, it breaks and they fall to the ground. Hiro loses consciousness. Then he's carried through the snow by Zero Two until she drops him. Hiro wakes up and finds Zero Two eating a mouse, and when he tries to get her to spit it out, she bites him. To get her to stop, he begins petting her hair. This reminds her of her mother and she lets go. He calls her mean and she appears to be ashamed. He realizes that she can't understand him but introduces himself anyway. Though she asks her name, she can't answer, and he sees on her ankle that her code is 002. He thinks of a name, first thinking of Oni, then 02. He thinks they're both bad, but she begins to try and say 02. When she continues to say it, he says that he should have thought of a better name but begins to call her that himself. 02 notes that she didn't understand his words but knew his voice called to her, saw new things with her, and walked with her. He makes her shoes. Hiro hands one of his candies and she doesn't really understand what it is. He tells her to go ah and slips it into her mouth. She enjoys it and Hiro eats his own, enjoying her reaction. She shows him her book, The Beast and the Prince, and notes that the pictures are pretty. As he begins reading, a group of adults appear, looking for them. The two hide and Hiro tries to calm her down. One man asks what they should do with 016, and the others answer that 002 takes priority and to kill him if he resists. Hiro pulls her closer and promises to protect her. The two continue to flee from the adults and they eventually fall into the freezing water. The two sit under a tree and Hiro finishes reading as 02 lies against him. He tells her that it's sad that they can't get married. When she tries to say married, Hiro explains what marriage is. When he looks at her, she smiles back. He says that they should get going, but she falls when she tries to stand. She had scraped her knee and blue blood oozes from the cut. He looks for something to bandage it, but is forced to lick it instead. He explains that animals lick their wounds to heal them. With him kneeling before her, she confuses his pose with the prince proposing. She asks if it's marriage. Smiling, he says that they will once they escape. He tells her he wants to be with her forever too, and become her darling. She begins crying and blushing and hugs him close. They look up and notice that they're under a mistletoe. They're suddenly interrupted by a group of adults. Though Hiro tries to protect her, he's hit with the butt of a gun and falls to the ground bleeding. After that, their memories are erased. Hiro forgets his promise to Mitsuru and stops naming other children. Subsequent tests reveal that his aptitude results are drastically dropping. Despite this, he continued receiving special treatment from the adults. Approximately 5 years later, at age 14, Hiro is discharged from the garden and assigned to Plantation 13, where he's paired with Naomi. During their capacity test, Naomi and Hiro try to connect, but their positive pulse and P factor drops and they time out, causing them to fail. As protocol, they're to return to the garden, although Hiro, as a special specimen, is offered to stay. However, he declines out of despair because he wasn't promoted as a parasite. Alone and Lonesome. Hiro lays under a tree and narrates how he read a book about the Jian, a bird that's known to possess one wing a long time ago. He adds that it often has to hide in the trees and unless it finds a partner as a male-female pair, it's incapable of flight. He considers the Jian to be pitiful creatures. He sits up and finds that Ichigo messaged him. He hears a noise and goes to investigate. He finds blood on the dome and notices a bird lying on the ground. When he tries to pick it up, it weakly flies away. Hiro follows the trail of blood and hears chirping, noting that it's still alive. He comes to a lake and says he never knew it was there. He notices clothes on a tree and wonders if it's a parasite's, though the clothes aren't like theirs. He picks up the underwear and notices someone swimming naked, causing him to turn away, but when he looks again, she's gone. He runs into the water thinking that she drowned, but she suddenly jumps out of the water with a fish in her mouth. 02 spits the fish out and wipes her mouth. She leans in and sniffs him. He suddenly comes to his senses and says that she's naked. He asks if she's a parasite and why she was bathing. She says that she heard the ocean water was salty. And she says that it feels good, and since he was staring so hard, she thought he wanted to swim too. Hiro comes out of the water and explains that he thought she was drowning. He looks away and asks that she put on clothes. 02 points out that he must be a pervert since he's holding her underwear. Hiro thrusts the underwear towards her and blushes. 02 laughs at his reaction and thanks him for jumping in to save her. She puts her clothes back on and asks if he's a parasite too. He says no, that he can't pilot, even dragging his partner down with him, concluding he doesn't have a place there. 02 says she's always alone too, thanks to her horns as she puts her band on. She tells him to build a place where he does belong and to find another partner or take on by force. She suddenly licks his cheek and straddles him, causing the bird to fly away. She says that his taste makes her heart race. It bites and lingers like the taste of danger. She asks if he would have preferred a kiss. He doesn't really understand, so she says it's special. She says that she's taken a liking to him and asks that he be her darling. But Hiro asks if she means partner. She extends her hand and says that his ability is probably still dormant, and she has the ability to awaken it for him since he wasn't afraid of her horns. They're interrupted by 081, who says they're looking for her. He asks why she keeps running off alone. She says there's nothing to do until the next day's welcoming ceremony. He plops her hat on her head and says that, as her partner, he suffers for it. 081 apologizes for 02. Hiro asks what he meant by partner. He tells him to stay away from her, as she's not the kind of pistol that just anyone can handle. They begin to walk away. Hiro asks what her name is, and she asks if parasites even have names. Her code is 002, so everyone calls her 02. A soldier says that Missile Teens issued a search request for him. As he's dragged along, he finds the bloody corpse of the bird. At Missile Teen, Hachi gives Hiro the official instructions for his return to the orphanage. He says that HQ had given him special permission to remain there and asks him to reconsider. As Hiro leaves the meeting, he finds Naomi crying. As they wait for their ride, Naomi tells him that he should stay and asks if he refused for her. He says that he wouldn't be of any use if he stayed. She says he's running away from his partner and himself. She asks if he remembers how many of their friends disappeared from the orphanage. She tells him that he's lucky to have a chance to stay at all. Crying, she says she'd do anything to stay and asks why he had to be her partner. After Naomi crosses the bridge, she turns and smiles, telling Hiro to take care since she doesn't think they'll ever meet again. As he runs towards her, she tosses her luggage at him. She says she doesn't need it anymore and to share it. She smiles and thanks him for her name and hopes that he finds a good partner as her door closes. A fog rolls in and the ritual is stalled. Hiro begins to refuse to leave when Naomi's ship is hit by a Klaxosaur. The Plantation begins firing at the Klaxosaur and Strelizia in its stampede mode. 02 throws 081 out of her FRANXX and tells Hiro that he's done for. Hiro tries to stop her from piloting alone, but she says that it'll start moving again eventually and that everyone will die. She says she's not afraid of death and she has a job to do. But he says that he'll pilot with her and she asks if he's prepared to die. He says that he's essentially dead already and asks to be taken along. She points out that they're similar and it'd be a long time since she saw a human cry. She pulls him into her FRANXX and into a kiss, calling him her darling. Strelizia instantly activates and easily destroys the Klaxosaur's core and defeats it. They're shocked when it's revealed that Hiro was piloting it. 02 drops Hiro to the ground, and Nana introduces her as a pistol with the Special Forces Unit 8 directly controls. 02 looks down and smiles to him, saying she found her darling. What it means to connect. Hiro watches the startup ceremony with Nana and Dr. FRANXX the next day. Although he was told he piloted a FRANXX, he has no recollection from when he first got inside. When he returns to Missile Teen, he buries the bird. He returns to the boarding house and finds Ichigo playing with a cat. She tells him that she heard Naomi was alright and got taken to the hospital. She asks if he was the one piloting Strelizia. He says he doesn't really remember and wants to try again. She says she heard a rumor that 02's partners could never ride with her more than 3 times. He says without being able to pilot, he's as good as dead anyway. Goto comes through the door and tells Hiro to come in quickly as 02 is at their mess hall. 02 slathers her food with honey as she sits at a separate table. The Stamens watch her with Hiro commenting he couldn't believe all her injuries healed so quickly. Zorome says it was a treat to watch her. He graciously offers to ride with her and says he could do a lot better than Hiro. 02 responds by wiping her hand on his shirt. She gets up and sits on the same chair as Hiro. Hiro asks if he really managed to pilot with her and she says yes and calls him darling. The rest of the pilots are unfamiliar with the term except Ichigo, who's not surprised. Nana comes in and announces that she'll be their caretaker just like she was in the garden. She says that Ape HQ has assigned her to the 13th Plantation Corps. Hiro asks her to let him ride in her FRANXX again. Smiling, Nana says that it's up to Papa and the rest to give him his orders, and watches as 02 leaves. The Stamen look through their lockers. Goto says he's amazed Hiro managed to fight that Klaxosaur. Hiro says he doesn't even remember anything but how it felt. Goto says he's happy he stayed, and maybe he's the type that comes through when it matters most. He playfully nudges him for getting a jump on him. Zorome roughly shoves him and says that he doesn't believe for a second he piloted a FRANXX before him. Hiro watches from his training unit as the other parasites pilot their FRANXX. After their training, Hiro returns to the yard and Zorome kicks a ball at him. When Hiro gets hit, he sarcastically apologizes and remarks he thought he'd dodge it. Zotome continues to mock him, so Hiro walks up, insisting he indeed did pilot, and they butt heads. Goto and Ichigo rush out and pull them apart. Ichigo gets a call from Nana. In the conference room, Hachi and Nana announce that Hiro will partake in a mock battle, and depending on how he does, will promote him to become a parasite. When he's asked to pick a partner, Zero Two volunteers. Ichigo says that she should instead. Nana says that HQ hadn't authorized the use of Strelizia, so Hiro will have to pilot with someone from his own squad. Zero Two sulks and adds her injuries haven't healed completely anyway. She mockingly asks that Ichigo take care of her darling. The parasites, along with Hachi, Nana, and Zero Two, watch. Ichigo tells him to focus on connecting and she'll take care of the rest. Both Argentea and Delphinium manage to connect. However, Hiro and Ichigo suddenly disconnect, so Ichigo asks what Zero Two did differently. Hiro says Zero Two and him kissed as soon as they got in Strelizia, and everything turned bright. Ichigo seems to be unfamiliar with the term kiss, but she tries it. Afterwards, he says he didn't feel anything and adds that Ichigo's lips were trembling. Argentea suddenly attacks and Zotome says that he doesn't mind taking over as the pilot for Delphinium either. Hachi announces that since both FRANXXs have been rendered inoperable, the mock battle is over. Hiro apologizes. Trying to hold back her tears, Ichigo tells him not to apologize, adding the phrase, "You were awful." Fighting puppet. In the Plantation's inner city, Hiro comes out from being scanned to find Ichigo. He asks her if anything's wrong and he says that he didn't find anything. She unenthusiastically says that she's happy to hear that. Hiro is about to say something else when he's interrupted by Nana calling her and she runs away. Hiro returns using the elevator. At Sarasis, Goto asks if something happened between Hiro and Ichigo in the cockpit since she was acting weird after the mock battle. Hiro says that she seemed mad when she ran into him earlier as well. Goto says that she always gets too worked up when it comes to him. Since there aren't many with codes in the teens, Hiro and Ichigo are basically siblings. Goto says that they've always been together with him at their side. He says that it was a miracle that all three of them got assigned from the special class to there. Hiro agrees that they are like siblings. He asks Goto, since he's her partner, to tell Ichigo that it wasn't her fault. Goto agrees but asks what he's going to do. He says that he'll ask if he can ride with Zero Two again. Goto asks if he's heard about the rumors that her partner can only ride with her 3 times without dying. But Hiro interrupts to say that if Zero Two is the only one he can ride with, then he has to ride with her, since their entire purpose is to pilot the FRANXX and that was the reason they were born. Hiro practices fighting alone as Zero Two watches from the ceiling. After he leaves, he finds her leaning against a pillar, seeming to be asleep, and Zero Two stands and says that she was tired of waiting for him and begins walking, telling him to follow. He asks to where, and in the hallway Zero Two walks through a scanner, but Hiro is stopped. He says that parasites have restrictions on where they can go, and almost all of that area is off limits to them. Zero Two shows her hand which says S rank on it. She walks back and leads him forward, allowing them both to cross. She brings him to a balcony and he asks how she knew about it. She says that all the plantations have similar designs, and Hiro says that he's never set foot in the city before, only ever the birdcage and a few other facilities. He looks over at her and she asks why he's staring again. He smiles and says that he's trying to think up of a name for her since he's really good at it. She says she's fine with Zero Two, and he asks if it doesn't feel lame to go by a codename. Zero Two hops over the railing and balances across a thin beam. She says that once they die, they'll only be a statistic, and it won't matter what they're called. She says in that lifeless city there are no skies or oceans. It's isolated on a one-way street to nowhere, a dead end of life. Hiro says that it isn't safe and to come back as he extends his hand. She turns and asks if he wants to run away together. She says she can get him out of there, and she does flips back to the balcony and says she's just kidding. Hachi says they received sortie orders from the HQ, and Nana tells them that the Klaxosaur won't be as big as the one they already saw. Hachi says it's a Conrad-class Klaxosaur, a bit smaller than a FRANXX. He says that they're attracted by magma energy reactions and appear in their vicinity. He says lately they've been showing up deep in a level 8 mine on the outskirts and wreaking havoc. Nana says that Strelizia won't be a part of the mission. Because they'll have to defend Plantation 13 by themselves eventually, it'll show if they can handle fighting them in the future. Nana says that Ichigo and Goto will have field command. Nana and Hiro stay in a briefing room where Hachi announces that Chlorophytum will stay behind. When Ikuno and Mitsuru return as well, Nana asks if Ikuno is not feeling well. She says that that isn't it, and Nana says that she's always been a bit unstable and that they'll run tests the next day to make sure. Mitsuru asks if it could be that they have compatibility issues. Smiling, Nana says that a lot of parasites experience that at first, and it isn't grounds to split them up. Mitsuru seems disappointed. Ichigo says that they have visual on the Klaxosaur and they're spreading out. They run to it and begin slashing it. Before Zotome can finish it, it attacks and knocks them over. Miku is electrocuted and passes out, and Futoshi shoots and exposes its core, followed by Ichigo stabbing it. Zotome tries to check on Miku, as does Ichigo. Many more suddenly fall from the ceiling, so they plan on fleeing. Nana says that they're attracted more because they release their magma energy. Zero Two says that she should have been sent from the start, saying that the entire team will die. Hiro is alarmed and tells Nana to send himself and Zero Two to help, but Hachi refuses and says that he isn't an official stamen, so he can't give permission to board a FRANXX. Zero Two says that the Plantation squad is going to be wiped out and to let her pilot with Hiro. She says she won't be allowed to sortie, and Mitsuru says that he could pilot with her. Nana tells Mitsuru that Strelizia is no ordinary FRANXX if he isn't used to its connection. Mitsuru says that if Hiro could, there's no way he couldn't. Zero Two says that she wants to ride with Hiro, but he asks that she just go with him. As Mitsuru walks by Hiro, he tells Hiro not to come crying to him when he regrets his goody two-shoes act later because he's going to prove that he can pilot Strelizia better than Hiro did. Hiro watches the battle unfold and, like Ikuno, is dismayed as Mitsuru brutally kills the Klaxosaurs and offers to become Zero Two's official partner. Nana orders Zero Two to desist and sends a retrieval team for Strelizia. Hiro is relieved that everyone's okay. However, when they retrieve Strelizia, Zero Two walks out and smiles and waves at Hiro, who waves back. But Hiro's shocked that Mitsuru is gravely injured and unconscious. She says that he isn't suited to be her darling, only Hiro is, and seeing his comrade like that gave him the proof Hiro needed. Flap flap. The group worries for the state of mind and health of Mitsuru as he leaves his food untouched. Hiro walks in and asks what happened with Zero Two, and Mitsuru tells him of Zero Two trying to completely devour him, including his blood, flesh, and soul, while smiling, and is warned not to ride with Zero Two again. Later, Ichigo approaches Hiro about his decision to ride with Zero Two again and states how she can't trust her, especially after what happened to Mitsuru. She says that if the rumors are true, Zero Two will eventually kill Hiro. Despite her warning, Hiro persists on his desire to ride with Zero Two. Hiro trains and thinks about Zero Two, the injuries on Mitsuru, and the rumors. He pilots the training unit and keeps running. When he returns to the FRANXX stock, Zero Two stares at Strelizia. Hiro sees Zero Two and hides hastily, and Hiro bathes and thinks about the rumors again. Zero Two appears and corners him against the wall, much to his discomfort. She asks him to run away with her, and she tells Hiro that he's her only partner, and as long as he's with her, nothing else matters. Seeing her horns, he gulps and was asked if he thinks she's a monster as well. Before he can respond, an alarm sounds. Zero Two and Hiro go to the command room in their suits, but Nana tells them that they aren't deploying Strelizia. The FRANXX momentarily stop the Klaxosaur, but another one appears in the mist from behind and grabs Argentia. Hiro and Zero Two watch, and she says that they should help and asks who landed in the transport plane. A group of escorts arrive, and Nana looks at the screen and says to Zero Two to do as they say. Nana says Zero Two is returning to the front lines. As a man takes Zero Two away, she bids Hiro farewell. Nana then says that the order was from Papa and the rest. He asks if the partner-killer rumors are true, and she answers that she's a special pistol who must keep fighting on the front lines, and that she takes a toll on the stamen who becomes partners with her, and that she isn't simply human. As Zero Two walks through the hall, she turns and looks behind her, where she sees Hiro come to a passage he can't cross and yells to her. He says that he was afraid of riding together, and he still is, but because he lacked resolve, not because she isn't human. Though he had been moping, he felt like he could fly with her. He realized that he never really cared about riding the FRANXX, but about riding with her, and asks her to stay. Zero Two stops and smiles and defeats the armed men guarding her. She approaches Hiro and says that nobody has ever said such embarrassing things to her before. He says it was his first time too. Smirking, she asks if he wants to ride with her, and he answers embarrassed. They dance through the gate together and board Strelizia. Nana appears on screen and orders them off, but Zero Two ignores her and hangs up. She asks Hiro if he's okay, and he's nervous about piloting, but she encourages him and they successfully connect. They fly through the air and Hiro is happy to be able to pilot. They zip to where the other parasites are struggling and quickly save them. Ichigo orders everyone to focus, and Strelizia rips it from the ground and reveals it was actually one long Klaxosaur. After the other FRANXXs pin the Klaxosaur to the ground, Ichigo asks Hiro to help. Strelizia stabs its core, destroying it, and Hachi announces that they neutralized it and tell them to return to base. Your Thorn, my badge. The parasites watch as the plantations connect. Zotome asks what kissing is, and Miku mocks him, but she doesn't know either. Kokoro points this out, and Ikuno explains that it's a transfer of magma fuel reserves from one plantation to another through a large pipe. Mitsuru explains that the fuel is essential for both the adults and them to live, and FRANXX can't be operated without it. Goro says that since it's a large-scale transfer of magma energy, it should attract a large number of Klaxosaurs. When Futoshi and Zorome seem nervous, Hiro reassures that they have Strelizia, so they'll be fine. Ichigo sadly agrees. Hiro narrates that a grand ceremony was conducted with the utmost solemnity. The children of Plantation 26's FRANXX squad was also in attendance, and they seemed a lot more calm and composed than Plantation 13's. Hiro also attends the ceremony while Zero Two doesn't. The mayor says that the Klaxosaurs are sure to attack in great numbers, and the fate of the two plantations rests on their shoulders. He says that they're strong and will bring them to victory. Hiro narrates that being treated like VIPs gave their morale a boost, though they sense the fierce battle approaching. At the boarding house, Goro wakes up, and when he puts his hand on Hiro, he feels that he's burning up. In the bathroom, he asks if he's okay, and Hiro cheerfully says that he even feels like training. Goro is reluctant to believe him. Kokoro says that the ceremony on the previous day was so exciting she couldn't sleep. Miku says that 090 seemed nice, and Kokoro asks if she would like to ride with him. She says that it's better than the boys they're stuck with and tries to get Ikuno's opinion. Ikuno says that she doesn't really care. Zorome happily says that it's heartening to be supported by the adults. Futoshi agrees, and Zorome stands up and imitates the mayor's speech, making some of the parasites laugh. He finishes that he'll be the one who leads them to victory. Smiling, Ichigo says that Hiro will. Kokoro agrees and says that he's shown in the previous battle. Futoshi asks how he feels, and Hiro says fine. Futoshi's happy to hear this, and Miku says that the rumors about Zero Two weren't true. Ikuno says that maybe he's extremely compatible with her, saddening Ichigo. Hiro thanks them and says that he had a hard time keeping up with everything happening, but their support let them win. Hiro happily asks if he can let them fight as a part of the team. Goro observes him suspiciously, and Zorome becomes annoyed and tells him not to get cocky since he only got through one time. Goro asks if he has to be a spoilsport, and Hiro stands and tells him he'll do his best not to be a burden. He extends his hand and asks that they keep fighting together. Zorome is taken aback, but tells him to keep it up as he shakes his hand. As Miku teases him, Mitsuru becomes angry and leaves. Kokoro notices him walk out as Zorome says that he's the team's ace pilot. At 7 o'clock, Futoshi announces that it's breakfast. As they walk to the dining area, Ichigo stops Hiro and pulls on his collar, causing Hiro to recoil. This reveals a mark on Hiro's neck. She's saddened by his reaction and explains that it was bent. She smiles and asks when he'll take care of himself. She tells him she was amazed he realized what she was going for in the last battle. As they tease each other, they enter the mess hall. Zero Two runs over and pulls him away, and she sits in Futoshi's seat to the Stamen's disdain. Ichigo tells them to take their seats so they can pray. Kokoro invites Futoshi to sit beside her. After praying to Papa, they begin eating. As they eat, Zero Two begins offering Hiro a honey-soaked toast, which he eats and says is delicious. Goro looks uncomfortable, and Zorome says that he wants to try something like that. Goro asks why he doesn't ask Miku then. He says that he would rather ask a cute girl like Kokoro, but he notices that she's feeding Futoshi to his annoyance. Miku teases that she's too easily influenced and looks at Zorome at the same time. Ichigo looks down into her cup. Hiro gives Zero Two a tour, saying that they schedule their time for waking up, bathing, and sleeping. Zero Two is looking around, such as the books on the bookshelves and the specimen in the jars. Everything is laid out for them, such as their clothes and food. He says that the forest was built to fine-tune the parasites' numbers. She asks if that's why there's a ceiling, and he says probably, and that it still rains even with the ceiling. She doesn't know what rain is, so he explains, and she becomes excited and tells him to do it for her. He says that Papa and the others decide when it happens, and she's pretty disappointed. Hiro asks why Zero Two suddenly wanted him to show her around. She bounces on Goro's bed and says that she's going to live there too. Goro and Zorome overhear this, and Zorome asks what a girl's doing in the boys' wing. Hiro drags her out, and Zorome says that they're holding hands. Hiro wets his face in the bathroom when he notices a spider crawling up its thread. When he looks up, he sees that it's caught a moth. He suddenly clutches his chest. When Goro enters his room, he finds Hiro clutching his chest on the floor. Goro asks what's wrong, and Hiro says nothing, but he looks at his chest to see a blue tumor. He asks if it's been there since he rode with Zero Two, and even though he's about to call someone, Hiro stops him. Hiro downs a glass of water and chokes on it, and Goro asks Hiro not to pilot Strelizia again. Hiro says that he's determined, and Goro becomes angry and says it could kill him. Hiro says that he feels really alive and that he hadn't for a long time, and that he wants to give it his all on the next mission. Goto asks if he wants him to turn a blind eye, and if he's going to keep it from everyone including Ichigo. Hiro answers yes to all. Goto again becomes angry but turns to find Hiro smiling at him before walking out. Goto sadly calls him a complete, utter fool. In the control room, Nana comes in with Zero Two and Hiro. 090 says that they can't fight alongside Strelizia since she doesn't care about her allies. She doesn't know what he's talking about, but 090 says that they had a joint operation 2 years ago where his partner was killed under her fault. 02 coldly says that weaklings die, and that it doesn't matter. He begins to walk closer to her, but Hiro steps between them and promises to keep her from going out of control. As they walk home, Zotome expresses annoyance at being treated like dead weight. Mitsuru says that they're a makeshift team, and Goto stops walking and says that Strelizia shouldn't be a part of the mission. Hiro happily replies that they should show them what they're made of. Zotome agrees and tells Goto not to be so timid. Goto asks what Ichigo thinks, and she says they need Strelizia in the next battle. When he looks at Hiro, he notices 02 glaring at him. As they all slept, Hiro seems to writhe in pain. The next morning, Hiro notices 02 standing by the lake. She says that everything smells nice after it rains, and asks to make it rain again, but she remembers that he can't. He says that he can't say that for sure yet. She tells Hiro that this is where they first met. As she unzips his shirt, she says that only she is his partner. She says that none of her partners could ever ride with her more than 3 times, and he's asked by her if the tumor is painful, but beautiful. She says that if he wants out of the ride, now would be the chance, and when he says that he'll ride again, she twirls around happily. Darling in the FRANXX. In their room, Goto asks Hiro if he's going to fight. When he says yes and leaves, Goto calls him a fool. The girls come out of the changing room, and Ichigo and Goto talk alone, and she asks where Hiro is. Goto says still inside, and he again asks her to talk with him, and pushes her towards him as he walks away. Ichigo tells him that the operation starts late at night. They make small talk about their sleep before Hiro says that they should make sure the operation succeeds. He says that being a leader isn't easy, but he knows that she's up to the task, and that he's counting on her. She says that she counts on him a lot too. 02 walks by and stops briefly before continuing. Ichigo says that she always thought of him as a brother. He agrees and lumps in Goro too. He pats her on the shoulder and encourages her as he runs to 02. In their FRANXX, Hachi announces that, beside the Conrad class pack, they've also detected a large, tightly packed unit. He gives 090 field command, and 090 tells Strelizia to stay back. In Strelizia, Hiro watches and starts to pant and clutch his chest. 02 tells him that their team is all over the place, unlike Plantation 26. She says that she wants to fight already. Hiro asks why she fights the Klaxosaurs since she always looks like she's having fun. She says because she's a monster. She asks about him, and he says to protect Papa and all the adults of the plantation, since that's their purpose in life. 02 quickly retorts and says his answer is lame. Hiro says that they should move out to help. Strelizia quickly defeats many Klaxosaurs, and 090 scolds her for ignoring orders. Hiro says that he's just there to help his squad. Though 090 begins to protest, Hiro hangs up. 02 and Hiro begin to disconnect, so she turns to see him panting and clutching his chest. She asks if that's all he has. With blue veins popping out of his face, he sits up and she praises him. They continue to fight, and Ichigo tells Strelizia to go back, but Hiro says it's fine. She says to get back again, so 02 calls her bossy. Hachi orders all Squad 26 units to fall back, and Squad 13 will deal with it. Though the group agrees that they need Strelizia, Ichigo orders that they stay put. She says it'll land the finishing blow. Zotome becomes angry, but Goto says that only Strelizia's spear can reach its core, so they'll make an opening for it. Ichigo privately thanks him for his plan. They begin crawling up the Klaxosaur, and Hiro pants, and 02 asks if it's too painful. She says it won't end until they kill it, and he begins fighting and they launch into it. Hiro thinks they got it, but it swipes them far away and changes form again. This is where Hiro becomes unconscious. Their link is broken, and Strelizia enters stampede mode. It continues to smash them against the wall, and Hiro stands where he sent Naomi off, realizing he died. Naomi appears and scolds him for giving up without listening to his partner. She asks if he's okay with that, and smiling, he says that he doesn't care since he got to be of use. She calls him a liar as the elevator door closes, and Hiro sees 02 standing under a mistletoe tree. He thanks her for everything, but she sadly walks away. He wakes up to see 02 struggling, and that they didn't actually kill the Klaxosaur. He thinks that she can't do it alone. Realizing that she fights alone after losing her partner, he says that his wings exist for her as his veins retract. He hugs her from behind and she calms down. Hiro says that he's her partner and he won't leave her alone. They all begin attacking again to create another opening. Strelizia flies into its core as everyone watches in amazement. Dr. FRANXX says that he might make her wish come true. Hiro tells her he found another reason to pilot, so he can be her wings. She says she's sure he'll be fine, and they walk out together and the two groups celebrate. Shooting Star Moratorium. Hiro and Zero Two are talking in the docking lounge when Dr. FRANXX comes in. He tells them that they didn't have to come all the way. Nana introduces Hiro to Dr. FRANXX, the creator of FRANXX. She begins to introduce the boy, but he stops her. He approaches Hiro and says that he's the first person to survive Zero Two. Dr. FRANXX says that he has an interest in him. Hachi tells the doctor that Strelizia and code 002 are transferred into Plantation 13's purview. He waves at him and says that the geezers already told him. When Hachi announces that they're officially partners, 02 hugs Hiro. Dr. FRANXX tells Hiro not to let his emotions consume him, and if he wants, to always be her partner. Otherwise, he'll suffer. After the successful kissing with Plantation 26, Squad 13 was given a special vacation. The kids seem happy and 02 pulls Hiro to the water, and they laugh as she splashes him. Kokoro serves a ball to Miku, and Futoshi and Zorome admire their figures. They're surprised when they find Goto doing the same. Hiro follows 02 further into the water, and the three boys begin watching them. She notes how nice it feels to swim in the ocean, and Hiro seems embarrassed when he looks at her, and she asks what's wrong. He says that she looks good, but he can't look her in the eyes, and she thanks him for all he did for her. 02 seems to lean in to kiss Hiro, but instead she licks his cheek. She teasingly asks what he was expecting. She says that a kiss is a declaration that the other person belongs to you, and you should only kiss the person you love. She asks if he maybe kissed someone else. Before he can answer, Goto, Zorome, and Futoshi pull Hiro under the water. The boys toss Hiro on the ground. Goto says that he didn't want to bother him, but the other two wouldn't listen. Zorome listens closely to Hiro and asks what a kiss is, much to Hiro's embarrassment. Futoshi says that he doesn't know what it is, but it sounds magical, and Hiro tries to sneak away as he does. Zorome grabs him and asks where he's going. He tries to get Goto to help, but he says he wants to know as well. Hiro says that he doesn't know either, but it's when two people stick their mouths together. The others are surprised, and Zorome asks what happens. Hiro explains that it makes him feel good, but they weren't kissing in the sea. Zorome says he wants to try it himself and demands that Hiro let him kiss him, but Hiro resists. As he tries, Ichigo walks up and asks what they're doing. The other boys laugh as Zorome and Hiro fall to the ground. Futoshi asks if she knows what a kiss is. She becomes embarrassed and turns away, denying that she knows. Miku and Kokoro call the group back. Mitsuru leads the group through a thin cavern to show them what he found. Goto asks Hiro if there's a relationship closer to being partners, and that watching him and 02 makes him wonder. Hiro says he doesn't really get it either, and Goto mentions his relationship with Ichigo and thinks Hiro's different than them. They find an abandoned modern city and explore it. Hiro and Goto begin looking around on their own, and they eventually run into 02 and Ichigo, and Goto calls Ichigo and he and Hiro wave them over. They walk back to the rest of the group and Miku says that she's exhausted. Kokoro agrees, Zorome wonders about the city, and Ikuno says that they can be sure that it was part of civilization. Goto asks if people lived there in the past. 02 answers that they abandoned it and that humans used to live on the surface. She says that there are a ton of places like that around the world. Back at the beach, food had been delivered. They all begin eating, and Goto hands 02 a shish kebab. Zorome roasts a marshmallow, and 02 tells Hiro that she's going to go swimming before running off to the sea. Hiro asks why they think humanity abandoned the surface and wonders if humanity hadn't started extracting magma energy if the Klaxosaurs would have showed up. Mitsuru asks if he's doubting Papa and the rest. He says that they moved into plantations in order to protect mankind. This pumps Zorome up to Mitsuru's disdain and Futoshi as well. Zorome asks if he agrees, and when he shyly answers, he asks why he's acting so aloof when he's their teammate. Miku says that they have to put in both his and Naomi's share of the work. Kokoro says that she finds it reassuring that they're with them. Futoshi and Goto agree, and Ichigo stands and officially welcomes him and 02 into the squad. Hiro thanks them all. The parasites all sleep close together with Futoshi and Zorome lying on top of one another. Ichigo lies awake in her sleeping bag, and she sits up and finds Hiro getting up. They walk along the beach, and she says she couldn't sleep. He agrees and says that he felt it would have been a waste. She walks in his footprints and then looks up at the sky. She tells Hiro to look at all the stars and points out Orion. She says that he used to tell her about the stars when they were little too. He doesn't remember, but she says she remembers everything he taught her. She asks if he forgot about the Ichigo star, but he says that it's the 15th star of Orion, the same as her code. They continue to walk down the beach together, and she says they all have to do their best. She says she'll do her best as a leader, so she asks not to give all his attention to 02. She says she sees their kiss as something special. Before she can say she wants to be with him forever, he tells her to look at the shooting stars. The rest continue to sleep. but Zero Two watches from a rock. Hiro says that if you wish on a shooting star, it'll come true. So, he asks what she wishes for. She says she tried to tell him and teasingly called him stupid. He chases her down the beach. Boys and girls. As the parasites are fighting a Klaxosaur, it spews goo. It leaks into the cockpits and melts the girls' parasite suits. Though the boys begin spacing out, they don't tell the girls and they finish off the Klaxosaur. Hiro finally tells Zero Two and the rest of the girls realize what happened. The girls cover themselves with a towel and glare at their partners. Besides Zero Two, who doesn't seem to mind, the boys looked embarrassed, and Goto explains that they didn't tell them because they didn't want to distract them during battle. Futoshi says he didn't look away because he found Kokoro to be amazingly beautiful. Kokoro turns red and looks away. Mitsuru calls him an idiot and walks away. Zotome tells him that it's not like it's hurt to be seen, and Hiro says that Zero Two said it's better that parasites are a bit pervy, which Zero Two confirms. This annoys the girls further. The girls begin splitting the area of the house between the boys and girls. Hiro and Zero Two, however, don't take part in the conflict. In the yard, Zero Two plays with a ball as Hiro says the situation is starting to get bad and they need to do something. She says she thinks the opposite and they need to spice it up a bit. She changes the girls' only bath to allow boys, and when they enter naked, the girls are already bathing. They get angry and begin throwing bathing supplies at them. Zero Two runs out with her clothes and Hiro chases her throughout the house. They meet on the roof where Hiro begins laughing after she throws their clothes in the air. He asks her why she did this and she says she wanted to take part in a human fight before letting herself fall from the roof. Hiro rushes towards her but is relieved that she lands on the ground safely. Nana and Hachi then intervene and reprimand the children for their behavior. In the boys' room, Zotome's mad and Mitsuru says that they must look down on the boys. Hiro says it was fun and got to see more of a human side of Zero Two. Mitsuru says it's not the same for them since they have normal partners. Hiro says she's a normal girl and that Pistols let Stamens handle all the controls, but they bear the brunt of each battle. Hiro adds that this makes him want to take care of Zero Two and see her smile. Futoshi, Goto, and Zotome agree that they should look after the girls too. The boys go to talk to the girls but learn Miku has gone missing after refusing to end the feud. They find her in one of the sealed off rooms and learned it belonged to a former Squad 13 member that was killed in combat. Everyone decides to end the fight and get to know one another better. The next day, as they get ready to get in Strelizia, Hiro says that he wants to get to know Zero Two better. She tells him to grab on and never let go of her. Triangle Bomb. The parasites are happy to receive gifts. Hiro gets a book about birds, and Hiro tells Zero Two that once every year, they can ask Papa for the things they want. She asks if he got a picture book, but he explains that it's an illustrated guide. He asks if she likes picture books and says they might have some in the study. Zotome shouts that he'll read Papa's message. The message is as follows. Boys and girls, your numerous accomplishments represent a ray of hope, a harbinger of peace and prosperity for mankind. Glory be to you noble parasites who risk your lives for us. The parasites smile as he reads it out loud. The letter congratulates and praises them, making everyone happy. Hiro notices that Zero Two is unfazed by the letter. At 7:10, Hiro gives Zero Two Naomi's mirror because she's never received a present. Smiling, he says that he wanted to find something for her. She smiles and hugs him, saying that she never knew getting a present can make her so happy. She promises to take good care of it. In the room, Goto holds a hair clip. Hiro comes into the room, and Goto teases him for how Zero Two smiled at him. Hiro blushes and asks if he was watching. Goto apologizes, and Hiro asks if the hair clip he's holding is Ichigo's. Goto says that it's the same type of hair clip, but it's the one he tried and failed to give her. Goto asks if he remembers when he said he didn't understand love, and says that he's starting to think it means the other person is special to you. Hiro agrees with this definition. Goto says that Hiro has always been Ichigo's hero, and that it's special. He says that Ichigo feels the same way about Hiro as Hiro feels about Zero Two, like wanting to know more and be together and kiss. Hiro is taken aback and Goto asks if he hadn't noticed. Goto says he knows what makes her laugh, cry, but none of them would work for him, only Hiro could. He says that watching him lately made him realize that he loves Ichigo. He says he feels relieved to tell someone and quickly takes off his glasses to sleep. Lying down, he smiles and says that he's happy with the way things are. Hiro and Goto turn off the lights and sleep. Hachi tells the parasites that they've detected a Gutenberg-class Klaxosaur, and Nana says it's moving slowly. As she continues to talk, Hiro looks over at Ichigo but turns away when she looks at him. An Argentia approaches first. It's wrapped in tentacles and brought closer. It attaches explosives, which causes slight injury. Mitsuru notices the core and quickly charges at it. He only nicks it and it begins to multiply its jelly. Goto quickly pushes them out, but is stuck instead. Goto quickly launches Ichigo before it explodes. Goto wakes up and turns off the alarms. Hiro begins messaging him. He says that Ichigo's fine but got knocked out by the ejection and he's getting treated with Zorome and Miku. Hiro explains that he's inside the Klaxosaur. They were ordered to retreat, but Futoshi promises that they'll figure something out. Goto says that he's switching to safe mode to conserve power, and Ikuno says that you can't utilize a FRANXX magma energy without its pistol. Mitsuru says that they're programmed to run their life support systems on backup power. Zero Two says he'll die if it runs out, and they'll all be in danger. Ichigo suddenly charges in with Miku and Zorome following. Though Miku tries to stop her, Ichigo asks what happened. Zorome says that he told her that Goto tried to save them. She turns and asks why they aren't going to rescue him and how they could abandon him. She asks why he'd cut her loose when he's helpless alone. Zorome becomes uncomfortable and backs away from the argument. Miku sighs and calls her annoying and says that Goto is always looking out for her, like the time Hiro almost died when she broke down and Goto got her back on her feet. Ichigo asks what gives her the right to talk to her like that. Miku says that she's supposed to be the leader, but she loses her cool and lashes out constantly, and that Goto must have a hard time with her as a partner. Nana and Hachi enter and, smiling, Nana claps her hands and says that she's glad they're safe. Hachi explains that the Klaxosaur vaporizes its body fluids to expand and explode. Kokoro asks if Goto's stuck in its fluid. Nana says that the fluid's harmless to FRANXX, and Zorome says that they'll rescue Goto first since he owes him. Hachi coldly says that their top priority is preventing the target from making contact with the Plantation and explains their plan. Hiro angrily asks if they'll leave Goto to die, and Nana says that if worse comes to worse, they will. Hachi tells them to prepare to sortie. Ichigo sits in Strelizia's hand, and Hiro says that to get to Delphinium, she'll have to cross an area of highly pressurized vapor fuel. Zero Two says she wouldn't do it if she was her. Smiling, Ichigo says she believes in her. Zero Two smiles and says she doesn't dislike that. They throw her in and she swims to Delphinium. When Delphinium escapes and plants a detonator, Strelizia and the other units withdraw as the Klaxosaur explodes, the city of eternity. The FRANXX return after killing a Klaxosaur, but Hiro notices that Zero Two seems sad, so he asks her what's wrong. She replies that she was just thinking about something and they both leave together. Nana shouts that she has good news. The parasites gather around her and she happily explains that they have to wear their formal clothing the next day as Pop is going to award them medals. The ceremony will be held in the Plantation Parliament HQ, much to the children's excitement. Zero Two looks indifferent and turns to leave. Before she can, Nana stops her and says that she'll arrange for her to undergo tests while there. Zero Two says that she hates the tests and always feels lousy after she takes them. She turns and smiles, saying that she's in great shape right now and will pass on the tests for a while. After she leaves, Nana says that she thought she'd grown more obedient since she teamed up with a certain someone. The next morning, the kids are dressed and wait to get picked up for the ceremony. Hiro didn't notice that Zero Two is being standoffish, but Hachi and Nana open the door and they all leave. The children marvel at the city. At the ceremony, the mayor congratulates them and thanks them for their efforts. When he congratulates Ichigo, she says that it was everyone's effort. He tells Zero Two that their plantation is honored that a former 9 like herself has joined them. He turns to Hiro and says that he's lived up well to the expectations placed on him. Hiro thanks him but looks troubled and turns to Zero Two, who still looks indifferent. Afterwards, Hachi says that he's leaving the rest to Nana. The children are disappointed with how the ceremony actually played out. The girls push Nana to let them walk back, and she reluctantly agrees. The children look around as they walk back. Zorome happily looks forward to when they too can live there as adults. The others disagree and feel like they won't be able to become adults, though they don't know why. Ikuno says that this is a delusion. Zero Two and Hiro walk far behind the group, and Hiro asks what she meant when she said the city was lifeless. She says that's just what she said. Hiro says that she's been acting weird and asks if something happened. She says that she couldn't care less about this place. The children marvel at the city's main energy source. When Goto asks Ichigo, she seems uncomfortable. He says that maybe he shouldn't have told her how he felt and says to not let it bother her. Nana orders the children to head back to Mistletoe, but Zorome becomes fascinated with the energy machine, causing him to get left behind while the others leave. He's found shortly after. As he cleans a bath, he hums. Miku enters and yells at him to take it seriously, starting a fight. Outside, Hiro hears them bickering and laughs before looking at Zero Two's window. Partner shuffle. During a briefing, Ichigo reports the squad killed 25 Conrad-class Klaxosaurs before being dismissed. As the unit stands on guard, Zonome asks what S-planning is. Hiro replies that it seems like they're digging for something, and Zero Two says that it's probably nothing good and she can smell Klaxosaurs. An alarm suddenly sounds and Ichigo tells them to get ready. Chlorophytum suddenly falls due to Mitsuru falling ill, forcing the other units to deal with the Klaxosaurs. The next day, Nana suggests that they try a partner shuffle. She tells them that it's simply an option available to them. Hiro asks Zero Two if something's bothering her, and asks if she remembers when he asked her to speak her mind with him because he wanted to get to know her better. As he talks, she covers his mouth and says they can understand each other just fine by piling Strelizia together. Like the others, Hiro is surprised when Kokoro asks to try riding with Mitsuru. In his room, Futoshi cries into his pillow as the other boys are at his side. He asks if he did something wrong. Zorome suggests that maybe he annoyed her and that he should lose weight. Goto wonders why she would, and Hiro replies that she must have felt she had to do something for Mitsuru. Zorome smiles and says especially since he's so miserable. Futoshi leaps out of bed and begins shaking him, saying clearly he's the most miserable. Goto tells him to calm down as Mitsuru suddenly returns. They all turn to look at him. He begins to leave, but Futoshi angrily asks if he thinks he's pathetic. Mitsuru asks what it matters who their partners are. Futoshi easily throws the others off of him and says he has no idea how he feels. He tries to punch him but misses and falls on his face. Mitsuru adjusts his tie and says he's annoying. Hiro tells him to try and understand Futoshi's feelings, and Mitsuru clenches his fists and asks what right he has to say that. Hiro doesn't seem to understand and Mitsuru walks away. On the floor, Futoshi says that when he thinks of Kokoro, his chest feels tight. He says that tightness hurts now and wonders why. Hiro smiles at him and says he understands. A Gutenberg-class Klaxosaur approaches and Hachi commands to set up a defensive line 500 meters away, 500 meters from the S-planning, and neutralize the target. He says that Ganista and Chlorophytum will act as rear support. Zero Two suddenly attacks and Hiro says its core is too deep. She rushes in again and is trapped, forcing Miku and Ichigo to save her. She tells Ichigo to mind her own business and charges at it again. The pieces cut off turn into the Conrad-class Klaxosaurs they'd been fighting. Before she can attack again, Hiro stops her and she tells him not to get in her way. He asks Ichigo what they should do. Kokoro says they need to shoot at it. Futoshi cries as they talk. While Kokoro talks with Mitsuru, he recalls as a child he asked Hiro to pilot with him. Hiro admires and agreed, and they made a pinky promise. However, after receiving his injection, Mitsuru approached Hiro, but Hiro had an emotionless expression on his face, and he forgot about the promise. After the battle, Hiro sadly looks on from his FRANXX as Futoshi tearfully confesses he loved Kokoro to her and Mitsuru. Zero Two embraces him from behind and tells him that they'll be together until they die. The garden where it all began. Squad 13 arrives at the garden, the place where they were raised, to undergo tests. Hiro narrates that the garden is a parasite development facility that houses hundreds of children and that there's a laboratory that towers over the garden. The children call it the lab. As they walked into the lab, Miku says she saw it every day but never went inside. Kokoro says that very few children got to enter, though Hiro did a few times. Hiro says he was designated special research subject. When Futoshi adds that Mitsuru would have went there too, Hiro doesn't remember and Mitsuru's offended. Nana tells them that they were brought to run tests with them. She says that they're banned from entering the garden. When Goto and Ichigo wonder what they're being tested on, Hiro says that they're probably just tagging along with Zero Two. Hachi confirms that she in particular will undergo thorough testing. The Nines appear and Alpha says she must be in there for maintenance as well. She walks away and he says she's the same as always. Kokoro wonders who he is and Miku says he's hot. Nana introduces them and Alpha says it's a pleasure to meet them. He asks that they escort Iota safe and sound. Ichigo asks where he means. He says that they must know that all the plantations on the continent are currently heading there. Nana says she'll tell them later, and Hiro asks why she's called Iota, and he says that she used to be a 9 as well. He says that he's surprised a normal squad could tame her. Ichigo says that she's one of them, and that the special forces haven't been taught basic etiquette. She says that she'd rather fight along Zero Two than them. He laughs and says they aren't a normal squad. He walks over and kisses Ichigo's hand. Nana tells Squad 13 to leave. As they walk away, he says that he'd love to be part of their squad sometime. She says that they only have space in the attic and it wouldn't befit them. He says to himself that she's proud and dignified. After taking his tests, Hiro sits in a hallway. In a flashback, he asks Zero Two if something happened recently as she looked through books. He asks that she talk about it since they're partners, whereas she asked him to kiss. He was caught off guard and she pinned him against the wall. When she opened her mouth, he noticed her teeth and she stopped, saying never mind. Back in the present, Goto sits with him and Hiro says he plans to go to the garden to see Naomi so he can tell her that he found a partner. Upon arriving at the garden, Squad 13 notices all the children are being developed into parasites at a faster rate due to the increasing Klaxosaur attacks. Hiro asks a caregiver if Naomi has returned and she replies no because a parasite never comes back after being discharged. As they head back to the lab, Hiro ventures around the area, thinking about the time when the adults never answered his questions about the missing children, and this convinced him and the squad that they would never become adults. He stops in front of a mistletoe tree and has sudden flashes, along with the feeling that he's been there before but doesn't remember. When a group of Klaxosaurs attack the garden, Squad 13 is dispatched, and Hiro notes that Zero Two's canines and horns have grown longer. During the battle, a hysteric Zero Two ignores direct orders and attacks alone, claiming that she must kill more Klaxosaurs in order to become truly human. After the battle, Hiro asks the meaning of her words, but she refuses to answer. Meanwhile, Ichigo eavesdrops on a conversation between Nana and Hachi in which they affirm with each other that the sarification process in Zero Two and Hiro is intensifying, much to her horror. When the second wave of the Klaxosaurs attack, Squad 13 sorties again, and once more Zero Two turns rogue. Hiro again tries to restrain her and rationalizes that it's impossible for her to become human. Zero Two violently resists him, causing Strelizia to go stampede mode, and she begins strangling Hiro, saying that she's going to become a human and find her darling from before. Hiro connects too deep into her consciousness and he receives visions of a past long forgotten. The Beast and the Prince. Nana warns that Hiro and Zero Two's consciousnesses will connect through Strelizia and merge. Hiro receives long-forgotten memories from when he was a child living in the garden and was curious of the outside world, and how this provoked him into helping Zero Two escape before they were captured and their memories were erased. Hiro, crying, says that she was the girl with the picture book. She looks back at him with tears in her eyes. Punishment and confession. Hiro remembers Zero Two as the girl with the picture book from his childhood, and he asks how he could forget something so important. Zero Two catches Hiro before he collapses and asks if he's her darling from her childhood, and is horrified thinking of what she had done. Ichigo suddenly interrupts and throws her off of him and into Goro. He asks if she's alright as Ichigo tries to revive Hiro. The other FRANXX wait. When they return to the docking facility, Hiro is taken for treatment. Zero Two realizes what Hiro meant when he said he wanted to understand her better. Hiro wakes up and is surrounded by his teammates. He asks where Zero Two is, and Ichigo says she stopped her. Hiro has strangulation marks on his neck. They all leave, but Hiro stops Mitsuru. Hiro says that he made a promise to him before he got an elixir injection. Mitsuru's surprised, but says to never mind and it was a long time ago. He says he'd forgotten about it before that. He says that any other Stamen would have died long ago, and tells him to listen to Ichigo and stay away from her. Hiro says that he has something to ask her and thanks Mitsuru. He says that after that day, his aptitude kept decreasing. Though he felt like he died, she gave him a new life. He thinks it must be because he drank her blood. When Hiro gets up, he's stopped by Miku. Zero Two is also guarded and prevented from leaving her room. Ichigo comes in to see Hiro and they chat. She gives him an apple and tells him that Zero Two is returning to the Nines the next night. She asks if he hates her and says that even if he does, not to go anywhere. Hiro apologizes and Ichigo cuts her thumb, so Hiro bandages it for her, and Ichigo leaves the knife and apple peels. Zero Two breaks out of her room as Ichigo returns. Hiro unknowingly goes to Zero Two's room. He asks through the door if she knew about their past. He opens the door to find the room destroyed. He returns to the hospital to find all his teammates unconscious and her attacking Ichigo. Zero Two, with a devious grin, invites Hiro to talk lots and lots. Hiro scolds her for being such a monster and she realizes the damage she'd done to him. Zero Two leaves the plantation as the other parasites watch her leave silently. She passes by Hiro without saying anything. When Ichigo suggests they go inside, she finds that he's crying. He's about to go after her, but Ichigo stops him, saying he'll turn into a monster too. When he turns away again, she grabs his face and kisses him. Ichigo says that she doesn't regret the kiss they shared during the mock battle, and that she wants to be with him forever. Ichigo says that he'd always been her everything, and that she'd never been interested in anyone else. He looks up to see Zero Two's ship. The bird that shares wings. At Saras's international briefing room, Hachi explains that their objective is to take control of Grand Crevice. Though another group is attacking, they aren't making headway. Squad 13 is to group up with squads from the other plantations. Kokoro asks what Grand Crevice is. Nana shows them a video where a large amount of Klaxosaur are. Hachi explains that taking over Grand Crevice is Papa's long-standing wish and would be a turning point in humanity's history. On screen, a large group of FRANXX walk behind Strelizia in its stampede mode. At Ape Central HQ on Cosmos, Dr. FRANXX meets with the council. He finds that Zero Two devoured all of her stamen and he calls her a Hellcat. Hiro watches Zero Two attack a Klaxosaur. Ichigo suddenly grabs his hand and squeezes, but doesn't look up at him. The parasites of Chrysanthemum struggle against the Klaxosaur's large numbers. 090 screams when one of the squad mates is almost killed. Strelizia kills it, saving the FRANXX, and Alpha appears to take out more of them. He compliments 090, saying he did well for humans. He says they'll take over, so they can go in the rear. In Saras's command room, they receive a message from Mission Command saying they're prepared to sortie. Nana tells the kids to get ready. The parasites all walk away to battle. Goro tells Hiro not to be sad because they'll be fine. Ichigo says that she'll teach him how to pilot from the ground up when she gets back. He asks them to come back alive and they smile at him. The 6 united FRANXX company begins marching together. The 9s take out a bunch of Klaxosaur and Ichigo is amazed, saying it's like having a bunch of Strelizias. Alpha says that there's a lot of them. Beta points out Plantation 13 fighting, and he jumps behind Ichigo and says that her FRANXX is adorable. She sarcastically thanks him, and he says that they're holding them off fine, but they're not making any progress and that the crevice has been sealed off inside a thick dome. They need to strike from the inside to get rid of it. Hiro sadly watches from the control room. The unit takes out many Klaxosaurs and Unit 26 notes that they're fighting well. 090 notes that they're still all over the place, but he's happy they're there, and he tells them to regroup. They're about to enter the hole in the wall, but the Klaxosaur all flee. The control room detects magma energy readings underground ascertained to the Super Lehman class Klaxosaur. Dr. FRANXX walks in and is amazed that it was hidden underground. Hachi says he's never heard of that class. As it comes from the underground, it pushes the plantation on its side and it begins to break. 090 reacts in horror as his home is destroyed. Vice Chairman says to get 090 on the line and tells him they're moving to Protocol 32. He tells him that it's a great honor. The Klaxosaur moves towards Plantation 13. Unit 26 lines up with bombs. He whispers that they're counting on 13 now before the squad explodes. It stops, but its face smashes through the wall and it releases Klaxosaur inside. 02 runs in and begins attacking. The adults say that they have to neutralize the Super Lehman class and Papa and the rest will take care of the Grand Crevice. Nana says that Dr. FRANXX should return to HQ and Hiro to Misteltein. Dr. FRANXX asks if he finds her more beautiful than any human, pure, proud, and more alone than anyone like a Klaxosaur. Hiro says that she isn't a Klaxosaur. FRANXX says that he thought she had finally found a partner and Hiro goes up to Misteltein. The FRANXX struggle against the large numbers. 02 takes out a large amount of Klaxosaurs. Beta says that she's in a foul mood, and Alpha says that the thought of getting on that unseemly beast's bad side gives him the chills. In 02's room, he finds scratches and blood on the wall. In front of the window, he finds Naomi's mirror, which 02 taped back together after breaking it. Gulping, he asks himself why he's holding back. Kokoro says that they're being pushed back. Chlorophytum runs out of ammo, so they use a pillar to attack. Argentia is pushed back, and the old woman watches it walk forward from her window. Ichigo watches Strelizia, and Goto tries to get her to focus. They notice a training unit zip by them, as does Argentia. They realize it's Hiro. The training unit is taken out, so Delphinium stops him and says that he won't let him see her. Goto suddenly stops. He says he can't stand watching Hiro and Zero Two like that anymore. He steps out and tells Hiro to get in. He says that Hiro has something to say, and Ichigo is worried about her too, so he asks her to take him to 02. Hiro apologizes to Ichigo and they begin to connect. Finally connecting to him, Ichigo is disappointed to find that all his memories are of 02. She cries as they head out. Smiling, Goto quietly wishes them good luck. Argentia picks him up, and Zotome and Miku ask what he's acting so cool for. 02 thinks she was human, though she pretended she wished to become one. Ichigo charges towards her and she begins attacking and says that she's sick of how she always toys with her. After Strelizia breaks her spear, Delphinium slaps her and says she wishes she'd never known her. She breaks her helmet and Ichigo says to get her act together as she headbutts her. As the door opens, he finds that her horns have grown and branched and her eyes are red. He says that he came to see her. Ichigo says to protect Strelizia since it's the only one that can kill the monster. Hiro tries to connect, but he gets no response. He holds her horns and asks to be taken to her. She can't remember things but begins to when she recognizes familiar actions. She licks her wounds in a similar way. Seeing her book, she begins eating it. She learns the word boku and 02 and darling. She remembers him getting attacked and begins crying. 02's horns break and Hiro hugs her. She pushes him away and tells him not to look at her. They apologize and cry, holding each other. He says that they can see the world together and kisses her as she cries. Strelizia attacks and transforms into a red version of it and easily takes out the Klaxosaur. They confess their love for each other. Inside the mountain Klaxosaur, they find that its core is a collective mass of cores. A large hand suddenly shoots up from the ground. 9 Alpha laughs and says that it reacted quickly. It smashes a majority of the plantation, leaving Misteltein. Days of Our Lives. Mitsuru and Hiro inspect Sarasis' water sources. Mitsuru says that it's turning foul as well. Hiro says they should try and filter it. Mitsuru says that their water supply could stop at any time as he stands up. They're interrupted when 02 bangs on the pot and says that breakfast is ready. Ichigo serves up the rations. When Zotome complains, Ichigo takes his rations and says he doesn't have to eat it. Ikuno enters and offers to help, but Ichigo says that it's fine and asks if her fever went down. Zero Two places her forehead on Ikuno and says that she's 36.7 degrees, a normal body temperature, but tells her not to push herself. They pray for Papa before they eat, though Zero Two eats anyway. Zero Two lists off the chores and Miku, smiling, notes that she's meticulous. As the stamen eat, Futoshi stops. Hiro asks if he's okay. Futoshi lies and says he's dieting. Zotome laughs and pinches his stomach, saying he isn't cut out for it. Goto says it's been a month as he and Hiro look at the cans. Hiro asks if he wants to get back in the FRANXX. Goto says that, even though they were fighting and could die any time, not fighting makes them all fidgety too. He says that he thought Hiro was the most obsessed piloting the FRANXX. Hiro and Zero Two walk together. Hiro says that Goto must have gotten child fever last week. Zero Two curiously looks at a plant. Hiro explains that they're Sakura buds. He says that they're a really pretty color, like her hair. She giggles and says she wants to see them. He asks how she felt about their lives and she says they're having fun and would like to live like that forever. He scooches closer to her and is about to hold her hand, but she suddenly remembers that she was supposed to go bathing with the other pistols. She tells him not to peek. The parasites meet in their living room and Ichigo says that they have 5 sources they can use for drinking water. The parasites sadly reflect on their vulnerability, so Zero Two says they should cook their own food. Hiro agrees with her, and Mitsuru agrees with him, remarking how there are cookbooks in the library. Kokoto says that maybe they can do it then. They all agree except for Zotome, who pouts. Zotome and the rest are impressed with the 11 fish that she caught. Goto caught 9, and Hiro awkwardly smiled and scratched his head, saying he didn't catch any. Zero Two says she'll teach him later. The others want to try fishing as well. Before they eat, they all marvel at how they were able to cook. That night, Zero Two draws pictures in her room of the book they read together. When Hiro says that it's a sad story, she says that it was her first pretty thing. She met him and wanted to have something beautiful with him. She realizes now what it means to be human, and they embrace. She hears a Klaxosaur scream as another horn girl is shown. Eden. Zero Two looks at the flame of a candle in her room when Hiro calls out to her. He asks about her flower headband. She says that Miku made it for her. She shyly tells him not to stare, but says it's okay after he compliments her. Zero Two pushes his bangs back to reveal small blue horns poking through his forehead, and points out that they'd grown bigger. She thinks that they must exist because he rode with her or because she drank his blood. She sadly says that she drastically altered his destiny. He leans in and places his horns against hers. They kiss and rest their foreheads against each other. Blushing, Hiro says that it makes him happy to be more similar to her. She tells him that she ate her old picture book when they were trying to erase her memories. She says that she started wanting to become human because she wanted to see him again, and she was told that she could do that by killing Klaxosaurs, though she realizes that she shouldn't have believed them. Hiro asks if Papa and the rest told her, but she doesn't answer. She asks that he show her the picture he drew. He refuses, so she playfully snatches it from him. She finds that he crudely drew a picture of a king. She begins laughing, and he covers his face in embarrassment. She says that it's improved, and she loves it as she holds it against her chest. The next day, as Mitsuru stands motionless at a body of water, Hiro appears and they enter the water together. Mitsuru says that he doesn't understand what Kokoto's thinking. Hiro smiles and says that he's changed. Before, he'd only distanced himself from them, though Hiro says that it was all his fault for breaking their promise. He says that he's probably in love with Kokoto, since he has similar feelings for Zero Two as he does for Kokoto. He says that he can't be sure, but that's how it is for him as he stands up. Mitsuru stands as well and says that he's similar to Hiro and he's glad that he could have a nice chat with him after so long. When the Sakura blooms. While Ichigo speaks to Hachi about the squad's inevitable departure from Mistletoe, Goto holds his head and Hiro asks how his fever is. He smiles and says fine. Hiro says that Miku had a fever recently as well. Ichigo comes out and Goto asks what's wrong. In the elevator, she tells the two of their plans to abandon Mistletoe. Though she wants to stay, Goto says that they don't have enough rations and Mistletoe won't last for very long. As they walk back, Goto says that their life there wasn't so bad after all. Hiro says there's something he'd like them to do while they're still there. Hiro explains to the parasites that he wants to have a wedding. As they don't know what it is, Hiro explains that it's a ceremony where two people would make a vow together. Miku asks who'll get married, and Hiro says Kokoto and Mitsuru. Kokoto says that Hiro told them about it and it sounded wonderful. Mitsuru says they decided to do it before leaving. Goto, Miku, and Zotome voice their support. The parasites paint the side of the house, and Ichigo brings Ikuno out and they all pose for a picture. The next morning, Zero Two and Hiro walk through the Sakura. Zero Two wears a formal pistol outfit that Kokoto lent her, and Hiro compliments her. She asks if he remembers their promise to marry, and he says he does. They spin around in the petals while smiling and laughing. As the wedding begins, Hiro and the other parasites ring their bells as Mitsuru and Kokoro walk together, as well as throw petals. However, the wedding is interrupted by the Nines and an ape assault team, who have come to take Kokoro and Mitsuru away for re-indoctrination. Hiro and Goto quickly surrender, and Hiro calls out to Zero Two as she's beaten down by the Nines. Afterwards, the parasites sit sadly around the yard. Hiro thinks that it's like the garden and they're not allowed any happiness. As they pack, Hiro wonders where they'll be taken and if they'll come back. The cargo ship comes and picks them up. A couple of weeks pass. At the bird's nest, the squad receives a message that they then reunite with Kokoro and Mitsuru. Hiro apologizes for causing them trouble because he was the one who suggested the wedding, but both of them are confused, asking what a wedding is and having no recollection of the ceremony or each other. Zero Two tells Hiro that their memories have been altered, just like what happened to them. Hiro narrates how they realize they will have to fight for their destiny because they're all at the end of the rope. Inhumanity. Goto says that Mitsuru and Kokoro were implanted with fake memories, and Hiro walks up and tells the group that he's thinking of directly asking Papa to return them to normal. Looking at Papa and the other council via monitor, Hiro asks that Mitsuru and Kokoro's memories be returned. Papa refuses and says that they removed the unnecessary information and that there's no way to return them. The rest of the parasites are distressed, and the vice chairman says that what they're doing is a severe breach of protocol and would normally be punished, but they'll be let off with a mere mention on the record. He tells them to return to their waiting quarters. Futoshi demands that they apologize, and Zotome asks how many Klaxosaurs they have to kill before they can become adults. Hiro says they took away Zero Two and his precious memories, as well as Kokoro and Mitsuru's. He says they can't see him as their Papa, and to set them free once the battle's over. Papa agrees as long as they fulfill their duties in the next mission. They hang up. Dr. FRANXX tells them to show whether they can become real humans. Hiro says he saw him in Zero Two's memories and that he can't forgive him for walking out. Zero Two sits outside. He stares at her horns and she calls him a pervert. He smiles and tells her that they made their decision. He holds out his hand and they walk away. The doctor watches them walk away holding hands. He narrates that fate is more often cruel, but it can be powerless in the face of desire. He thinks that she would hate him if she knew. A new world. Gorilla says that they don't need to worry, and Baboon says that that's why they modified it for so long. Another says that they're implanting Strelizia in Star Entity's core. Papa says to Zero Two that it's for that purpose that they raised her. She is obviously unimpressed, but Hiro grabs her hand and asks what happens after that. He says that the future will belong to humanity if they defeat the Klaxosaurs. He says they won't call him Papa anymore, and they'll control their own destiny. On D-Day at Bird's Nest, Hiro, Zero Two, Dr. FRANXX, and Hachi go down an elevator with Strelizia. Hiro and Zero Two discuss their plans, and Zero Two says she doesn't care as long as they're together. She's about to say something about the last page of the book, but stops herself. They kiss as they promise to be together forever. They reach the bottom of Grand Crevice. Zero Two hears something coming, and they leave. One of the snake Klaxosaur breaks through the walls, and 001, the Klaxosaur princess, says she won't allow them to do what they wish with their child. Dr. FRANXX asks if she's there to take back Star Entity, but he says she can't since she's the last surviving of the Klaxosapiens. He says he'll operate it with her since he's always dreamed of it since they met. She suddenly pins him down and says she needs no partner, but she'll use the one he's offered. Strelizia tries to open a gate but can't. 001 catches up and pulls 02 out, saying that she's a duplicate that doesn't realize she's being used by the invaders. She says she isn't fit to pilot their child before throwing her out. She kisses Hiro and says he must not be an ordinary human before closing the door. She says she'll devour him and opens the door. Hiro asks how she can pilot Strelizia. She says it was originally one of their brethren. Her horns begin glowing and she sends a message to the pilots. Dr. FRANXX and Hachi hear as well. Dr. FRANXX says that he found that the Klaxosaur split into two forms. One returned to the Earth and became energy. Baboon says that the seal is an affront. Gorilla says that the magma energy is part of the planet's resources that saved humans from ruin. 001 says they're selfish and asks if they now want to steal her child. She says she won't allow it and that the child is a crystallization of their bonds. Alpha tells her not to talk down to Papa, and Dr. FRANXX finishes that the other form consumed that energy and evolved physically and stopped mingling with one another and lost their intelligence. Hachi asks what they are, and he says weapons built by the Klaxosapiens. They are composed of one male and one female Klaxosapien. The female soul connected to the weapon, and the male soul took root at the core. The cockpit. Hachi says that it's similar to the FRANXX. Dr. FRANXX says they're an application of the Klaxosaur system. Klaxosaurs that can be piloted by humans genetically modified to be similar. The parasites realize they'd been kept in the dark. 001 tells her child to awaken since they're nearly there. She begins the implanting process, and Papa says that he was hoping it wouldn't come to this, but they have no choice. Vice Chairman says they wanted to take it, and Hearing Horny, to space as soldiers. Papa says that if they can't have it, then it can go down along with the planet and they will return to their original roles. Klaxosaur begin popping out from the ground and shooting into space. They shoot spaceships in the sky. Star Entity wakes up and Dr. FRANXX says it's beautiful. 001 says that the humans made her ugly, but it's okay. She says a long time ago when they were attacked by invaders from the expanse of space, they fought and drove them off, and then holed up in the earth to prepare. They shoot at a Verm fleet. The Verm shoot back and 001 says that she won't let them touch their planet. It shoots back and destroys it. Papa says it's futile and she asks what Verm did to their child. The chairman and vice chairman's masks fall, and the vice chairman says that Star Entity is a massive life that could disturb the universe's peace. Papa says that if the Klaxosaur princess took over the implanting process, they programmed it to explode. They say that the planet will explode and leave nothing behind. Papa says that they'll take them to eternal paradise. 02 continues to walk staggering and says she'll keep her promise to Hiro. For you, my love. The other members of the council are confused and Papa explains that they have assimilated several life forms from all over the universe and help them break free of the shells of their bodies. Vice Chairman says that the time has come for humans to embrace their evolution. They say that there exists a form of pleasure that is gentle and perpetual that they will all experience. The three fall to the ground. Hiro curses as 001 struggles. He connects to her consciousness and asks if she's been alone since humanity existed. 02 walks along looking for Hiro. The other parasites watch as Verm kills other parasites. They wonder who they should be fighting. Dr. FRANXX says that the detonation stalled once Hiro connected, the explosion being triggered by stampede mode. 02 says that he bought them some time before collapsing. The parasites wonder what they should do and worry about what the announcement said. They agree to return to Grand Crevice to see for themselves. 001 says that Verm got her and that it's no use. Hiro asks about Verm and how long she'd been alive. 001 says that it had been more than 60 million years. They inhabited Earth as an advanced civilization. One day, Verm arrived. They were a group mind with no physical bodies and they wanted them to cast aside their bodies and join. During war, they forged themselves into immortal weapons and evolved into Klaxosaurs. By the time they fought off Verm, fighting and warfare were all that remained of their civilization, and they lost their ability to procreate. The enemy they fought off was Verm's vanguard. To prepare for their return, they went underground and the weak turned themselves into energy, and the strong combined to evolve into even stronger weapons. 02 wakes up and says that 001 called her a fake. Dr. FRANXX says that 001 is the sole survivor of the Klaxosapiens and that she's her clone. She was created to operate Star Entity on behalf of the human race. He says that she was the only success. He created the Nines using her cells too, but they didn't inherit the Klaxosaur blood. She says that she's going to save Hiro, and she doesn't care about the rest. Dr. FRANXX says he'll go as well. As Squad 13 continues, they run into the Nines. They command them to return and continue to follow Papa's orders. They kill more Klaxosaur but are attacked and killed by Verm. The FRANXX break through and they go to help the two. Ikuno and Futoshi clear a path. Ikuno's hair turns gray. They let 02 go alone with Ichigo and Goro. 001 and Hiro continue to struggle, and he relates to their want to fight, but feels that he wasn't really living when he only wanted to fight. Herring Horny begins flying. Alpha asks Papa to say something. Dr. FRANXX and 02 continue as they stay to fight Verm. Dr. FRANXX sacrifices his arm to the door as it contains 001's cells. Though he wanted them to turn him into a Klaxosaur, the snake allows 02 to ride. She asks him if he took her to Plantation 13 to reunite with Hiro. He says he wasn't expecting them to rekindle what they had and it was just a whim. Smiling, she thanks him for creating her and helping her meet Hiro. After she goes, he wonders how she became so human. As they break through the wall, the snake Klaxosaur dies. She opens the door to Strelizia and tries to revive Hiro. She finds out that he's covered in blood and that they'd run out of time. Her horns break free and her skin turns red, and she kisses him. 001 gives the rest of her strength to them. She stakes the planet on them. The two reunite under a tree after keeping their promise. They kiss, and the bomb disintegrates. It breaks their program and begins attacking Verm. Dr. FRANXX finds her beautiful before a rock falls down and kills him. Verm takes their lance and withdraws, saying that they'll bring back their army. Panting, Hiro smiles and says to 02 that they did it. She doesn't respond, and her face is lifeless as her horn crumbles. Stargazers. Hiro takes care of 02 while she's in a catatonic state and remembers when Strelizia flew into space with the Klaxosaurs after the battle was over. He tries to feed her, but she doesn't move. He's then confused when he notices a mysterious cut on her arm. Squad 13 begins attempting to grow crops in the fields to survive, but grows concerned when they realize their rations are limited and they no longer have water and energy maintenance. Hiro leaves in the middle of the meeting, and a concerned Ichigo asks him to tell her anything that's bothering him. He later finds more cuts on Zero Two's body and grows alarmed. The next day, Hiro goes to work in the fields, although he's exhausted from taking care of Zero Two. Goto asks him to sit out for the day, but Hiro declines. Then, everyone sees a Verm and Klaxosaur crash into the ground after killing each other, and then more Klaxosaur ships fly into space. Hiro hears Miku panic when Kokoro collapses. Hiro is present in the infirmary when the new Nana announces Kokoro is pregnant. In the hallway, Mitsuru, who realizes he's the father of the baby, but is torn between the choices of abortion or keeping the baby, asks Hiro on which choice is the right one. However, Hiro says that he doesn't know because he doesn't even know what's right or wrong anymore. Hiro goes to Zero Two's room and finds it empty. He searches for her and finds her roaming the hallway, looking at the sky. The next day, she goes missing again, and Hiro searches frantically for her. Goto tries telling him about the dire situation regarding the crops until Hiro finally spots Zero Two standing in the rain outside. He leaves Goto behind to reach Zero Two as she looks aimlessly at the sky. He finds the last page of Zero Two's story has no drawings, and he realizes she deliberately left it blank because she foresaw they would part ways one day. As his horns make contact with hers, Hiro realizes that Zero Two's mind is with Strelizia and she's battling the Verm. Hiro meets with Hachi to find a functional spacecraft that can take him to Strelizia's location. They're able to locate a Klaxosaur mothership that's still functional, and Hiro devises a plan to rescue her. He goes to the squad to tell them what he plans to do and Zero Two's circumstances. However, they oppose his plan because it's a suicide mission, and he's likely to get killed. Hiro acknowledges he'll probably die, and he respects how they feel, but because Zero Two kept her end of the promise, he intends to do the same thing. He then leaves the room. Goto stops him and berates him for disregarding everyone's feelings and going off to die while everyone who cares about him is struggling to survive. Hiro replies he understands, but he also wants them to understand how he feels, and he can't just leave Zero Two behind. Goto argues once more that Hiro is risking his relationship with everyone by going off to die and simply asking them to understand. Hiro replies that if Zero Two won't smile at him, he might as well be dead. Angry, Goto punches Hiro, who's unfazed. Hiro later cuddles next to Zero Two. The next morning, Hiro is about to leave when he's met by Squad 13, Nana, and Hachi. Hiro asks them where they're going, and Ichigo says they're going to help him bring Zero Two back. Zorome and Futoshi add they personally want revenge against Verm for trying to kill them or letting them die. The Nines also offer their assistance to fulfill their duties and intend to die in space. Goto says he accepts Hiro's decision and he won't fight it anymore, and now they are even. He adds that they all have chosen their own path, so Hiro can't fight either, moving Hiro to tears. Darling in the FRANXX. Mitsuru tells Hiro that he'll be staying behind, and Hiro acknowledges he has chosen to stay for Kokoro and the baby's sake. Squad 13 and the Nines fly into space with their FRANXX while the Klaxosaurs and Verm battle. Hiro is amazed he was able to connect with Alpha, who says that the Nines can be both Pistol and Stamen. Hiro feels like he's with Zero Two, and Alpha says that's because he's her clone. After returning to the ship, Goto and Ichigo meet with Hiro, who's looking at a photo, and they all reaffirm their goal is to rescue Zero Two. Persuaded by Ichigo, Goto apologizes for hitting him, and Hiro laughs and nudges Goto, saying it's fine. They spot a Verm fleet within Mars's orbit surrounding Strelizia. Hiro and Alpha head straight into the battle while the others follow behind as backup. As a fleet forms a barricade to prevent them from getting closer to Strelizia, Argentia clashes with them to create an opening for Hiro and Alpha to pass through. They finally reach where Strelizia is and see the entrance, but they're cornered by a massive Verm and are unable to land a direct hit on it due to its size. Alpha ejects Hiro into Strelizia and tells Hiro he's learned a bit of what it means to be human, but his home is the battlefield, and asks Hiro to tell Zero Two hi for him before self-destructing and killing the Verm. Hiro makes his way to the cockpit and sits in it while recalling his purpose to be with Zero Two. Her consciousness awakens, and Hiro, realizing it's her, asks her to devour him. He enters her consciousness and finds that her mind is filled with pages from her story. She tells him to stay away from her, and they can't be together because he needs to be human. Hiro says he wanted to see her and he wants to be with her. Hiro finally meets with Zero Two and reaffirms his decision to stay with her because they promised to be together forever. She tells him to stay away from her and she's fine with being alone. He calls her a liar and says if so, then why is the last page of her book left blank? He offers her his hand so they can rewrite the story together. She accepts and they embrace while he vows to never let her go. Zero Two merges with Strelizia, becoming Strelizia True Apis. She effortlessly destroys the Verm fleet. A warp gate opens and Hiro and Zero Two announce they'll be going through it and leave the solar system. Squad 13 asks why they're leaving rather than heading back to Earth. Hiro says Strelizia and the gate are linked, which means neither she nor him can stop the process, and the gate will close soon anyway. Ichigo begs for a reason why they have to leave, and Zero Two replies to end this war. Ichigo suggests that they all go, but Hiro says only Strelizia can withstand going through the gate, and because the next fleet will be larger, he and Zero Two need to take them by surprise. Goto asks Hiro if they'll come back, but Hiro doesn't respond. Ichigo says she won't allow them, but by leader's orders, they better come back alive. Goto agrees. Hiro and Zero Two promise to come back as they take a Klaxosaur bomb and enter the gate, which closes as soon as they pass through. In the cockpit, Hiro looks at the photo, which is the group picture the squad took before the wedding. Never let me go. After 70 days of traveling in space, Hiro notes how he hasn't had the need to eat or sleep and wonders if he's becoming a full Klaxosaur. But he says he isn't scared because he feels he's becoming part of Zero Two. They come across a swarm of verm and proceed to wipe them out. 783 days since the gate passage, Hiro falls asleep for a moment and talks to Zero Two about a dream he had in which their friends were leading normal lives on Earth. He also tells her that he had a dream in which they meet in a distant future, but he believes it wasn't a dream, but hope for them. After arriving at the Verm home planet, they're confronted by Papa and the vice chairman, who proceeds to send Verm soldiers to attack them. Hiro is knocked unconscious and loses his connection to Zero Two, who is impaled by hearing horny. Papa and the vice chairman say Hiro is unconscious due to the incompatibility of him being a human and her a Klaxosaur. At a disadvantage, Zero Two pleads for her friends to save Hiro. Back on Earth, Squad 13 realizes Zero Two's body can serve as a link to her and Hiro in space, and they join hands to send their thoughts to the two. Their voices reach them, and Hiro says he hears all of their voices, including the revelation that Kokoro and Mitsuru have a daughter whom they named Ai because, as her name means love, a word Hiro and Zero Two taught them, they want her to inherit the bond Hiro shares with Zero Two. Zero Two credits him for how their lives turned out as it was proof of his desire to live, but he believes he caused them trouble. She says it was because of his desire to live and how special he is to her as they met by chance, are bound by a kiss, and are attracted to each other by nature. She convinces him to help her once more. He's able to reconnect with Zero Two, becoming one as the Jian, and the Strelizia True Apis reverting back to the Strelizia Iron Maiden to take control of Hearing Horny and push the Klaxosaur bomb into the Verm planet. Knowing they'll die when it detonates, they profess their love to each other. The bomb explodes, destroying the planet and freeing the souls kept in the planet by the Verm, though Papa and the Vice Chairman survive and vow to return at the peak of their evolution. Hiro and Zero Two's souls begin making the long journey back to Earth. Everyone on Earth sees the explosion and realizes Hiro and Zero Two won the battle but sacrificed themselves, which saddens them. Over the next 8 years, the memory of Hiro and Zero Two remains on everyone's minds. Ichigo completes Zero Two's storybook, and all the children are taught to read it to honor their memory. Squad 13 reunites at a cherry blossom tree and thank Hiro and Zero Two for teaching them about life, love, humanity, and for giving them a chance to live normal lives. 1,000 years later, a young boy who resembles Hiro meets a young girl who looks like Zero Two. It's revealed that they are the reincarnations of Hiro and Zero Two, and they begin a new romance once again. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.